Welcome. My name's Alex Kim. I'm a n8n ambassador and verified partner. If you guys don't know what n8n is, it's a workflow automation platform similar to Make or Zapier. I've been a ambassador for almost a year and have been building automation workflows for a little over 2.5 years and have built quite a few of them and continue to build them out. I'm also the founder at WAD AI, where we built a system using n8n and NocoDB, which is an Airtable alternative. And we built a full marketing automation system using those toolkits. All right, so today we're gonna start our sessions, and Carson had asked me to put together some workshops to help your group merge the whole vibe coding or prompt-driven development with n8n and the automation capabilities that it brings. So we're going to be doing that with the app that's a goal tracker. That's one of the ideas that we had landed upon while we were beginning these conversations. But before we get into all of that, we do need to get some things set up. And initially, we thought they were requesting that we just deal with Lovable and Cursor and tools like that. But, I've been coding for quite some time. Before the whole AI thing came along, I was doing mostly Python related development. And since AI and all of these tools are now available to us, I do pretty much more full stack development using Next.js, if you guys are familiar with that. And I'm sure you've heard of Vercel as well. And those are the same company that's building those solutions. So rather than sticking with Lovable or something more consumerish, I think if you really want to build a full production grade app, I wanted to give you guys the toolkits to be able to do that, go beyond just Lovable and so more simpler, more sort of POC driven tools versus MVP and again, production grade tools. And these things that we're going to go over today are the toolkits and the tech stack that I use today to build out the multiple apps that I'm involved in. All right, before we get started, I want to see, Larissa, did you want to say anything to the group before we really jump in?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for coming and sorry for my lateness. Really happy to have Alex here with us today. I'm sure everybody's going to learn a lot. Super useful and relevant workshop. So I hope everyone enjoys, has a good time. And if there are any issues.
I think we lost her. All right. Well, Larissa, thank you. If you do come back, just hop in and, we can continue on with what you wanted to finish up saying. Where was I? All right. So the other thing as a foundation laying item is that I don't know the technical proficiency of this group. So I'm going to try and start more basic. And if you want to go further into it and deeper technically, just let me know and I'll see what I can respond with. All right, let's get started. The first thing we want to do is set up a new repository on GitHub. And if you don't know what GitHub is, it's a code repository that you will use for your projects to put all your code into it, do all your branching, do all your versioning, so that as you're building, let's say, feature sets, you're going to have a branch for each of those features, and then you're going to commit code changes as you're going along. And, it's owned by Microsoft. They bought them a while back, and it's probably the most used code repository out there. So we're going to set up GitHub because that's your master source of truth for all the work that you're going to do. This is the interface to get started. I already created this. As you guys can see here, I have a repository called USC F1F, but I just wanted to show you this interface. Typically, you want to make sure you've set this to a private repository so that no one else has access to it. I don't really need to set any of these other things up because as I'm developing the application, I'll put those things together and you'll see what I mean. So just make sure that you do set it to private. And once you're done with that, you're going to have a repository that's ready to go. It's got one branch, which is just a main branch. And typically when you are doing product development or projects like this, you're going to have a main branch, which you will consider your production branch, right? So that's the one branch that you don't want anyone to touch. And you'll have branches underneath that. Some people may use a staging branch or a dev branch, but I typically do it by feature set or by month even sometimes. So you never want to really touch your main branch. That's kind of your master controller, or and so make sure you're always branching while you're working within GitHub so that you're not overriding your production level code base. All right, so that is pretty straightforward. The next thing we want to do is connect our GitHub repository to Vercel. Now, what is Vercel? Vercel is basically a hosting platform so that as you're making changes in GitHub, it automatically will push those code changes onto Vercel, create a preview commit or a preview deployment of your code so you can see what changes have been made. And when you're ready, you can merge those changes into your main branch, right? We just talked about what a main branch is for, is your production grade branch. As you merge them, then it will actually deploy all that code and make sure everything is running before you actually put it live onto the web or whatever. If it's mobile, then it's mobile. So I've already done that. What I did was basically you want to connect your GitHub repo that you just created and just import it. And don't worry about the deployment fail because it will fail on the initial connection. But now we have basically a code repository and a server that you didn't have to configure, right? That's one of the beautiful things about Vercel is there's really no server setup, there's no configuration. It's really just virtual servers ready to go once you connect a GitHub repository. And you can see here, if I go into the deployments page, I had an error because there's no code, right? The other thing you will do, and we'll touch upon this later on, is setting your environment variables, but we'll touch upon that a little bit later as we get further along. The next thing we want to set up is Supabase. Basically, this is your database, your authentication mechanism, as well as your storage. So Supabase is very, very popular right now because one, it's very easy to use and it has all these capabilities built in where you don't have to go and integrate with, let's say, 3 different systems to have storage, to have authentication, and to have a database. I personally have broken off from Supabase, but for our purposes, we're going to stay inside of Supabase. And let's go ahead and, I didn't finish creating this, so let's go ahead and create this project. We'll ignore this. So now we have a Supabase instance, right? And we have all our variables here. And this is where I just showed you guys the environment variables. So keys, API keys, secrets, and things of that nature that you don't want to expose publicly. Those are going to be set, and we'll get to those settings once we jump into our sort of Claude Code interface. All right, so the other thing we were touch upon today is, if we go back to, where did I put that? So if we go back here, so the other thing, so I want to show you guys a few options in starting the design aspect of your project, right? So we talked about Lovable. If you guys are familiar with that, you put in a prompt or you can attach a file, you can attach an image, things of that nature, and then ask it to create a design for you. This currently uses a platform called Byte, which is a React framework similar to Next.js. And my personal preference is Next.js. So I typically don't use Lovable, but the designs that it creates is quite amazing, as you guys can see here in some of these examples. Okay. The other option that I wanted to show you guys today, in addition to Lovable, is a platform called Copy Coder. This works similarly to Lovable, except you can actually define the platform that you want to be building in. All right. And then the third option is to just build inside of Claude Code, which that's my ultimately personal preference. So let's go ahead and jump into Microsoft Visual Studio Code. If you guys aren't familiar with what that is, it's a IDE, it's a development environment. This is also owned by Microsoft, so you can see the whole ecosystem of GitHub, Microsoft Visual Studio Code. All of these things just work really well together. So this is my personal preference. You guys can install Cursor or Windsurf or similar IDE. And just to comment on those 2 other options, they are actually spin-offs from Microsoft Visual Studio Code, which is open source, and they've built their functionality upon that. So ultimately, you're going to be in Visual Studio Code. It's either which version you prefer, right? Microsoft or Cursor or Windsurf. So we are in Visual Studio Code and just want to kind of go through what's here, right? So on our left channel, we have all our code. And we typically, especially in the days of vibe coding and prompt-driven development, this docs folder is going to become very important to you. And as you're building upon features, you want to make sure that you're properly documenting those things, and so that you can always refer back to them, as well as the AI itself, you want to be able to refer back so that it has context to some of that functionality that's being built. The other thing I want to show you guys is that I already do have Claude Code installed. There is an extension for Claude Code that you guys can add to Visual Studio Code, whichever flavor you're in. And you want to make sure that this is also installed. And in order to start Claude Code in Visual Studio Code, you can just hit this button here for Claude Code, or initiate it by typing in Claude, and this will kick off Claude Code inside of the terminal window here. All right, so if you guys aren't familiar with Claude Code, it's basically Sonnet 4.5 or any of those models directly inside of your IDE helping you, right? So if you can imagine staying in something like a Lovable or a Bolt.new, you're going to be inside of this sort of application, not able to break out of it per se until you've exported this code base out to GitHub, and then you ultimately will end up in some sort of an IDE. So I prefer to go straight to the IDE. And one of the other things that you have available when you're in an IDE is just a lot easier to create agents to do certain functionality as you're working with both the code and maybe the marketing and other things that you're going to do for your project. And the other thing is just the ease of use to be able to add MCP servers inside of Claude Code and Visual Studio Code. Let me see. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is, before we get to even our PRD, I know that is on our list, but let's take a look at our tech stack. What are the frameworks and other tools that we're going to be using, right? So we have Supabase, we have Vercel. The next thing to decide is, well, what's our code base going to look like? Are we building a Python app? Are we building a React app? In our instance, we're going to do a React app using next.js. And so without using any AI, we're just going to install the packages necessary to build our app. Okay, so what I prepared here is a document called tech stack, and this is the stack that we're going to use to build this app on. First off is a install command for next.js. The next command here is a package called shadcn, which has a lot of pre-built UI components. All right, so forms, buttons, there's a slew of them, and so very popular package to work with Next.js and React apps. And as you can see here, we're going to install some packages to enable Supabase. And if you haven't heard of Resend, it's an email package. Again, very, very popular. That's being used. It's free to start. And as you exceed in some of those email daily and monthly email limitations, I think it's like $20 a month just to surpass that initial cap. We'll be installing that as well for email. And then a little bit later on, you want to make sure you've enabled your analytics. Obviously, you're going to do Google Analytics, but I typically install PostHog. And one of the main reasons to install PostHog is you're going to get screen replays out of the box pretty much for free until you've, again, grown to a certain size and you can actually have real numbers of users and activity to justify the price for the package. But very generous free package where you can have screen replay for your applications straight out of the box. So this is a pretty standard tech stack that a lot of the apps use. Again, I've replaced Supabase with some other packages, but for our efforts here, we're going to just get this started before we do anything further. So let's go ahead and install next.js, let that run, and then we're going to install these other packages as we go along. All right, the commands be pasted here. Yes. Well, actually, I can do that. I was going to actually just share this GitHub repo with you guys after our sessions are done. Right now, it's set to private. I'll just set that to public, and then that link to the repo, you guys can just either fork it. If you fork it, you just get the whole thing, and now you have a complete copy of it. All right. So while that's installing, let's go ahead and do that. All right. So when you're installing next.js, it's going to guide you through installing some supporting packages. Don't just follow along what they recommend, all right? So you don't need to change anything here. Don't configure anything different. Just go with what they're suggesting, and you'll pretty much be good to go. So don't worry about all of that stuff, okay? So while that's running, let me go back to the tech stack. I want to install ShadCN. This run. Okay, so there are two interfaces to Claude Code that you guys are seeing here. This is the terminal version, and if I click this one, you guys will see that this opens a completely different interface for Claude Code. All right, this is more of a friendly interface to it. You can change it to be just a terminal experience. I prefer that because this version here for Claude Code is a little bit limited in functionality, as you guys can see. These are the commands available, but if I go here in the terminal version, I have a lot more items available to me. One of the big things I use all the time is this agents command. And you guys can see here, I have a lot of agents already pre-built that I use quite often, okay? And this is one thing I want to show you guys as part of our sessions here is expanding the power of Claude Code beyond just sort of the coding part of it, but having all of these agents available to do various things. And I'll show you what I actually do with it, right? So for example, like, I have a custom agent to do marketing strategy, is having a look through the website and all the content and making suggestions. The other thing I use quite a lot is the designer and UX researcher that is working with the brand researcher. And so quite powerful when you start to go into what's available in terms of the agent ecosystem inside of Claude Code. And this is where you now start to go well beyond tools like Lovable, because you can actually start creating agents that are customized just to you, right? So here you can create a new agent, and if you just give it, and you can decide whether this is a project base or that agent is available throughout all of your Claude Code instances, right? And that's why, so if I just do a project one, Claude will actually help you build this agent out, okay? So if I say, help me create an agent that will prepare a go-to-market strategy for my product. Okay, we'll just start with that. Let that run, and then next we'll run this command for ShadCN while that's agents being prepared. So let that run. All right, so here what's happening is Claude Code is thinking through your agent request, right? And you'll see what it comes back with in terms of the agent itself. And I'll show you quickly how to actually use that agent. Okay, it's going. All right, so right now, the default is to give this agent access to all the tools available. I typically select that. I haven't found a reason to not do that yet. So the other thing here is there are 3 models available now from Anthropic. I don't know if you guys know, but Haiku just released, which is sort of the less thinking, it's faster responses. It's kind of like a mini or a nano versions, but what you want to do is just inherit from the parent, right? And set the automatic, and here is the high-level summary of this agent. So let's just go ahead and create this, right? So what was that? What did it? I didn't read the name. Did anyone catch the name? I think I went too fast. Actually, you know what? I'll just look into this Claude folder. There we go. Go-to-market strategy architect. Let me open this up. So because this was a project-based agent, it is now actually available here in your project folder. Otherwise, it would be in your system user folder, which is why all of these agents are not in this folder, but in the list of agents itself. So let's take a look at this. Use this agent when you develop. Okay, you're an elite go-to-market strategist. Okay, cool. So you guys can see how even for non-coding exercises you might be doing, I'm finding more and more that the Visual Studio Code interface with Claude Code is becoming my replacement for ChatGPT and Claude itself, right? So I'm finding myself going less and less to those interfaces, but doing a lot of my activity just inside of this because I have access to 4.5, and then I can also do a lot of different things such as copywriting or marketing prep or social media content or just even research, right? So there's a lot of different capabilities. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to sort of show you guys outside of what you've heard a lot about Lovable and tools like that. where you can actually open up a lot more power once you go into Claude Code. So that finished. That was Shatsian. All right, let's do Supabase. Okay, while that is getting set up, let's start talking about the prompt for the PRD. Okay, so I already created a fairly decent PRD. And if you guys don't know what a PRD is, it's a product requirements document. And if you're going to create a product, you need some sort of a plan. And typically it's in the form of a PRD. And that PRD, as you see, will have a lot of different information in there. And this is the prompt that we are going to start with. It's just a very basic prompt to say we want to create a PRD for a goal tracking app. Here are some of the core functionalities, the user experience, and the technical requirements that we've already been discussing, right? So Next.js, Supabase, Shatsian. We actually don't need Prisma ORM. We're not going to add that complexity just yet. We're going to just use email and password for authentication. Supabase has a lot of other options for you guys. If I go into this interface here and I click on authentication, so the sign-in providers here in Supabase, as you guys can see, we have email enabled by default, but all of these are available to you if you want to get them set up. All right. So for whatever reason you wanted to do, let's say LinkedIn as a authentication provider, you can get that set up, get all the OAuth credentials with LinkedIn, and take care of that. But for our purposes, we're just going to do email. But you do have a lot of options in terms of the authentication mechanisms, right? So this is where I started, okay? And this is a prompt that I ended up with. Let me show you that real quick. And then if I do that, let me install resend, get that running. Okay, so I spent a little time with this simple prompt. And if you guys, I will show you what that session looked like. I'm going to recall, let me see if this was the one. Yeah, so this is the prompt or the session I used, right? So I asked it to look at this document and create a new version of the prompt or the PRD for me. And so here's where we ended up. You guys can see that this is quite extensive in comparison to the simple prompt. We're going to create a lightweight application. I'm not going to read this word by word, but we have the key features. We have the user experience. And one of the most important things when you guys are creating the PRD is a data model. What is a data model? Basically, what information are we capturing in the database and how is that going to interact with each other? I've found that a lot of people miss this portion when they're thinking about their PRD, and it ends up being a little bit of you kind of go in circles with your coding sessions because that piece is missing. And then as you're sort of adding new things, there's no plan and no data model to edit and add and delete from, if that makes sense. So when you're thinking about your PRD, make sure you include some sort of a data model, right? And in our case, this is relatively simple for now, but can you imagine like building a full production grade app? You're gonna have a very complex database schema. And as it gets larger and larger, you just want to make sure that, you're managing that properly. In fact, if you kind of think of it as sort of your app definition versus everything else here, and you sort of make a conscious effort to manage that data model, I think it'll be very helpful for you as you're building your products, all right? So very important part there, the data model, and we already talked about the tech stack. Authentication is going to be through Supabase. We have resend for the notification emails, right? So notification emails and things of that nature, sign-in emails, right? Those are considered transactional emails, and they're treated differently than what your marketing emails might be, right? And typically resend is primarily for transactional emails. You can use something like Amazon SES and other tools for the emails, but resend is super simple to set up, and you'll see that even within Claude Code, it just knows what it has to do. The other component that we're going to cover in our next session is the n8n workflows themselves, right? So as I was going through this, I actually asked it to think through what some of the workflows we could create might be, so that instead of coding some of this functionality, we're going to use a visual workflow builder and put webhooks in front of it so that the Next.js app can call those webhooks, let the workflow process, and then send back some data. So that structure can help you build your apps a lot faster because you can just think through the logic and not have to worry about getting the coding portion right. But it does come back to this data model, because whatever tool it is, whether it's React Code or n8n workflow, it still has to interact with this data model. So just keep that in mind. So for some reason, it came out with 6 different workflow ideas. I'm not sure, or 7. No, sorry, 8. I'm not sure if we're going to get to 8 different workflows during our sessions, but I definitely do want to show you guys the power of being able to create these workflows and connect them together. In fact, several of my apps are doing that, right? But to the user, there's really no difference, right? It might just, there's no sort of interface difference or interaction difference, maybe some speed difference, but for your purposes, if you can build out functionality faster and easier and have it connect to your app, I think that's definitely a bonus, right? That will require a n8n instance. I'm not sure if you guys have even looked at that, but you can get a cloud instance fairly quickly. I self-host all my n8n and databases for the most part, but in your case, it'll just be a cloud account. Typically, it's $20 a month, right? So there we go. This is our full PRD. Let me take a quick break. Do you guys have any questions so far? Would really love some feedback if you guys can tell me whether this is too basic or if you need clarification on anything. No feedback. All right, I'm just going to keep going then. All right, let's see what was next on our agenda. So we have our PRD. So let's start the design process. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to come back to our PRD, and I'm going to grab a piece from the top. So we'll take this right here, okay? So we'll take that top part, copy it, and we're going to have Lovable. So I'm going to drop this in here. And before I do that, let's do a quick goal tracking app. Let's do a quick search. See if I come back with any examples that might be good. Okay, let's see. The reason I'm doing this, guys, is so that if there is a app or interface that you guys like and sort of want to model from, you can capture those images, or actually so you can capture those images and add it to this, and Lovable will take that into consideration as it's developing the interface. I'm going to also paste in the PRD here, and let's let these guys run. So we'll get that started, and we'll get this one started. Okay, and then let's go back into Claude Code. Now we'll start a new conversation so that I'm not using any of the previous memory in our chat session to get through. Yeah, okay, so we're done with our tech stack there. So let's ask Claude Code. Actually, before I do that, let's see if we're stuck. Okay, that's okay. All right, so before I can actually get Claude Code started, there's one extra command that I forgot that I need to run. Now that we have our tech stack installed, that means if you look at this package.json, it shows you all the packages that are installed and ready to go. The next thing I want to do is run an init command for Claude. And what that will do is Claude will look through your entire code base and see what tech stack is being used, what state this project might be in, and build sort of an instruction file for itself called claude.md, and it'll put it into this .claude folder. And so when you guys are getting started on any project, definitely run this, and this claude.md file will be an ongoing live document, right? So for example, maybe you say, hey, I want to allow Claude to auto run certain commands. And if you approve certain commands, it'll continue to add to this Claude Code document and sort of know that it doesn't have to ask permission to run certain commands or run certain searches and things of that nature. So let's let that run and then see where Lovable has ended up. It's still thinking. Let's see, I'll create a beautiful motivation, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yep, that was pretty fast. See what it's going to show us. See if copy coder's still working. Okay, oh, this is a little bit different. They changed their interface. All right, let's add a screen here. It's almost like a type of interface. Okay, so let's switch the order here. All right, let's have it generate this. Okay, so Lovable has finished. If you guys have seen some of the more vibe coded apps, and I'm guilty of this as well. For some reason, this color palette of purple and orange for the color scheme on these designs is very, very widely used. So it's like starting to become a indicator that that app or that site has been used something like Lovable or some of these other tools that we're looking at. So interesting start here. So we'll leave that as the Lovable version. Let's see what this has come back with. Can I double click this? Oh, I need to zoom in. Okay. Not as slick, but it's, you can see here, it's got the right components. Okay. Now let's go back to Claude, see where it is at. Okay. Okay. So here we have an example of that auto approve request, right? And so I'm just going to let it continue to create files without having to ask me every single time whether it can write certain files. And that was for this session, but the future approval for certain commands will be added to this MD file, as you guys will see once we keep going. Okay, so let's see. Claude, okay, did it see where it's written that? Okay, there we go. Claude MD. Great. It now understands that we're building a personal goal tracker, understands the file structure and the various components of this app, right? Great. So that's going to be, again, an ongoing document that's going to be built upon as we're going to create this app. So let's give Claude, let's clear the memory in this session, and then let's ask Claude to build an interface for us. And this time, because we're inside of Claude Code, I'm going to say, we need to design the application theme and template. Okay, so you guys can keep these instructions relatively simple, or you can try going deep into this. For the most part, this PRD is going to help Claude Code understand it. We already just did the Claude MD, so let's see what this comes back with. And here in, while that's running, here in Microsoft Visual Studio Code, as you guys can see here, this is our source control, our versioning with GitHub. The GitHub repository comes in, and you guys can see here, these are all the changes we've made so far in this session. And what you want to do, if you aren't familiar with it and how this works, I want to go ahead and stage this, all of these changes, all right? And then before I do that, sorry, let me create a new branch. I'm going to say October 16th. So that's the branch that will be merged into main if it's all satisfactory. And prior to AI, you had to sort of write all your commit messages automatically or manually and things like that. But nowadays, you just hit this little magic button, and because Microsoft Copilot is built into Visual Studio Code, and you're now leveraging the free tokens that are available inside of Microsoft Visual Studio Code to create these commit messages. So you never really have to write a commit or pull request message anymore. So we'll go ahead and commit these changes so that it's tracked, and any future changes to those files will show up as a changed file in that list once again. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this branch so that it pushes it up to the GitHub repo. And if I come back here into our repo, you'll see now we have a new branch called October 16th with all of these changes. So we're not going to merge them yet, but I just want to show you what that process looks like if you've never seen that process. Okay, so this thing is actually coding, I think. Let's see. Oh, why can't I get down to this? All right, it's not letting me scroll down. Let me close this for now. Okay, while that's trying to get to the bottom, let's go back to our Lovable and copy coder. Okay, so let's see. All right, not sure if I like this overall approach. Okay, I mean, these are on the first shot, like the fact that it's built all these little icons and functionalities in, it's a pretty good job. Versus here, let's generate the dashboard, see what that looks like. It is nice that on this product, I can actually add multiple pages and they'll sort of all be thematically aligned, versus here, not exactly sure where I can add the pages. Oh, here we go. As you can see, I'm not the best Lovable user, but let's see. preview latest. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. All right, let's continue to let that generate. Come back to Claude. Okay, now I can scroll. Let's see what it did. Okay, this is continuing to build the code itself. You guys can see here, it's gonna run this. Now I wanna prepare you to be able to preview this. Okay, so let me clear this real quick. All right, so while this is working, let me show you the environment file that I've already prepared for this. And so what this is going to be is a local file, okay? This file itself will not get uploaded onto GitHub repo. And the reason it won't be uploaded there is because of this little magical file called gitignore. And you can see here that, where is it? That any file that starts with the name .env will not be included in this list of files being uploaded to GitHub repo. And that's very important, okay? Especially when it comes to your environment files, but it's because these are your API keys, your passwords, and other secrets that you don't want to be stored on the server. They will reside locally, and when you're ready to fully deploy onto Vercel, you're going to copy those environment variables into this section. Remember, I showed you guys this earlier where right now it's empty, but as we add API keys and things like that to the app, we want to make sure that it's set up here properly so that we can run the app. All right. So we'll address that in a little bit once this thing finishes working. Let me see, it's created a design system file. Let's see what it's done. So you guys can see here with Lovable and even Copy Coder, we're just getting the visual elements, right? Where yes, it's creating the code similar to what's happening here, but this inside of Claude Code, it has a lot more context to build from versus a single shot visual build. And this is one of the reasons, again, that I think this is a better way to approach it. You guys can see that based on my request to create a system here, it's already thought through that. And now this context is going to be available for everything else we do from here, this point forward. Does that make sense? I think it would be best for me to just maybe take components of this that are nice that I've seen, but to actually work inside of Claude Code so that we can build, towards a more production grade system here. So you guys can see here that Claude Code itself pulled the designer agent because it has access to those lists of agents, that it actually called it and decided to use it to build out the request. Okay, so let's let that continue running. And then I'm going to come back to how to help you guys preview this application. Okay, so before we get this code onto Vercel, we need to be able to run a local server, right? And with Next.js apps, there's a very easy command to be able to do that. It's npm run dev, but I typically run this full command. And again, here, I'll put this on the chat for you guys. Server for next.js. Okay. The reason I use this full command is it removes any sort of cache that might exist from ongoing builds, right? Because as the code is changing, you're going to see this list grow and a lot of things are going to happen. And so sometimes you just need to clear the cache and let the server start from scratch and not have to deal with any of the previous information. So we're going to go ahead and copy and paste that. And if I run this, this will start a local server, right? And the primary command here is the npm run dev, okay? So we got the project started and it'll give me a local URL once it's done, right? And let's see how long this thing takes to finish, but we'll come back here while that's thinking through stuff. Okay, not as nice and polished as the Lovable version. I definitely do like that Lovable version. Where is it? Let's see if I can trigger it to preview again. Yeah, still using Byte. Okay, see if that loads the preview for me this time. I'm not quite sure exactly how to reload that. All right, so yeah, this is some nice parts here. Okay, all right, let's come back here, see how far Claude's gotten. Yeah, this is thinking through a lot of different things for me here. Nice. The reason that we're seeing all of this happen is because it's following the instructions inside of this designer agent. So if I can show you guys, if I start another Claude instance, okay, and this is another reason here, guys, where you don't have to be stuck in just one Claude instance. You can actually run multiple instances as you're doing different things within this project or in other projects. It's not really limited. I can have multiple instances. So, all right, so if I look at the agents, right, and go down to the UI designer, let me open this up a bit. So if I go down to the UI designer, if I can get to that. Oh, there we go. So if I open this UI designer and view this, you guys can see here, this has a lot of different instructions here, okay? So imagine trying to hand code or prompt this every single time that you're trying to build a product, right? It's very time consuming, but the use of the agents like this that are pre-built, that have very specific instructions, and you're happy with those instructions, they can go and do the things that right now we're seeing on screen, okay? But the other cool part here is that if you wanted to, you can say, help me create a brand guidelines for this project, right? So brand guidelines. This project and I'll do an @ symbol here. And so you can see here, it pulls up the agent that is already in this list. So we have the brand guardian or the design brand guardian, right? And maybe I say also include marketing strategist. So what I want to show you guys here is that you can use multiple agents in a single prompt, right? So if you know which agents you have, you can combine them, and now it's going to call all of those agents as it's thinking through orchestrating the tasks to complete that prompt, right? So I can say further instructions and say, put the outputs into a folder in /docs/ let's name it by date. Okay, so we'll let that run and see what it comes up with. All of this documentation is going to help you as you continue to build upon your product. And again, hopefully by now you can see the clear difference of working in something like Lovable or Copy Coder, and now stepping it up like literally 10x and having now a complete system for you to be able to build your products upon. All right, so here is a example of where this is now asking me to, can I make a directory in your documents folder, right? And so in the future, I don't want it to ask me to make a directory. And so if I select the second option, right? Now if I go in here in my Claude MD, you guys should see, where's my Claude MD? Okay, you should see a pre-approved, I'm sorry, that's the wrong file. This settings local. Now this make directory is going to always be allowed to do it. So this document here will continue to be updated. Similarly, you'll see that this document claude.md will also be updated as you go along in your projects. Okay. All right. So let's see where it's at. Did it create the folder? Great. So we've got this folder here, and it'll continue to run docs index. Okay. Let's take a look at the index file. Okay. So this index file is a README for all the design work that it's just completed. In structure, okay, design system, color palette, screen mockups. Okay. All right, let's go back to our local server. Okay, so we do have our local server running, and let's see where we ended up. Right, pull up this address. See if it's done building. It's loading, okay. But they did not actually build it. Okay, let's ask it to proceed. All right, I'm gonna go through all of these because I think I have a pretty good idea. Close these out, already running. Okay, for some reason I thought it had already started to build the components. Oh, it's in the design demo, got it, wrong URL. All right, let's put the right URL in here. Dashboard example, buggy still. Okay, let's tell. All right, while that is doing its work, let's talk about MCP servers. Okay, if you guys are familiar with MCP servers, it's basically the next level of API access to certain tools, right? Where now if you have an MCP server installed, Claude Code can interact with it directly, and you don't necessarily have to have it run commands individually. So right now, there are no MCP servers installed in our Claude Code, I believe. Yeah. So one of the most important things for our project is going to be the Supabase MCP server. So what happens once you install the MCP server is now as you're building and having to create certain tables or fields or run other SQL database commands, the AI itself will just interact directly with Supabase so that you don't have to do any of that really manually. And I use it quite often. It's very, very convenient. And before you really get comfortable with it, I actually wouldn't allow it to auto run all the commands. Make sure that you are comfortable with the features that or the commands that it's running to the database, because especially if it has access to your production level database and it runs certain commands, it could bring down your total app. And just be very careful as you guys are getting started with using MCP servers, because it has access to everything. Okay, so let me see. So in order to install the MCP command, I'll show you guys that we currently don't have any MCP servers installed here. If I can get that running. All right, so /MCP, now this will show me a list of the MCP servers installed. And here you can see we don't have anything. So let me exit out of this and go back into the terminal. And here I've prepared a list of MCP servers that I think you guys will need to run or want to run for this project. And so I copy and paste this and install the Supabase MCP, and then I will install the Playwright MCP, and I'll explain what Playwright is in just a second. And then I will hold off on the Stripe MCP. Well, no, let's go ahead and do that. I just want to authenticate Stripe at this time. Okay, so now these 3 MCP servers have been installed for your project. So if I open up Claude again, just finish. Okay, do auto allow. Okay, that go. All right, so we're back on the MCP server, Claude. So if I run MCP, we should now see 3 MCP servers. Great. So these are all connected, Stripe and Supabase. I don't know why that is already. Yeah, so I'm already authenticated because it's picking up from my previous authentication. So in your case, this will not be authenticated. You'll need to re-authenticate with your server. The other thing I want to explain is what Playwright is, okay? So Playwright is also owned by Microsoft. And what it allows you to do is control your browser using Claude Code. Why is that important? So let's say you have an interface that's you're somewhat happy with. Now you need to do testing of certain functionality, right? Previously, you'd have to write code, just test code, right? So you could write code that says, hey, go to this page, find the code for this button, click on this button, make sure it goes to this page. So you end up with a suite of test files. They're called n8n test files or E2E test files. But by installing the Playwright MCP server, you now can avoid all of that, right? You can have the AI control the browser, test certain things, and then make sure that everything is working. So you don't have to actually write test files. So if I say use Playwright MCP to test this page, now it's going to call that MCP server. Okay, yes. So we're going to add another auto command, let that run. And here I will show you guys. So it opened up a Chrome browser. It's going to check the page and it's going to pick up on the error. Yeah, see, I can see there's a build error. Great. And now because it knows what the error was, you didn't have to prompt it to go and find that error. It's going to go ahead and find where the error occurred, what file is causing that error, and then go and fix that for me. And because we're using Next.js, this should live real-time preview or load the page. Yes. Okay, each session needs auto approve. So you guys can see how leveraging Playwright is going to make your life a lot easier, because you don't have to go and manually identify the problems. The AI itself can find those issues and fix them, and it's still causing errors. So we're going to let that go a little bit and see if it can get everything fixed so we can preview this page that we've been waiting for. So here we see the challenge of using Claude Code versus a Lovable or a copy coder is that you are now doing it on your own, right? And so there are going to be issues that arise, but I think, if you can just prompt through things, work through the issues, and understand what the problems are, you can definitely get the outputs that you really want at the end of the day. Okay, so let me see. Let's see if we can fix this for itself. I want to see the demo. All right, so all the local host pages are reloading. Yeah, it's still not fixed. Let's let it continue to run and see if we can continue on with some of our other items here. Okay, so the other thing I want to touch upon, and this has to do with two terms that you should be familiar with as you're building products and apps, is one is called KISS, the other one is DRY. And these are software engineering principles that have been around for a very long time. KISS stands for keep it simple, stupid, obviously. And the other DRY is don't repeat yourself. And basically both of them are implying keep your code simpler. And one of the things you guys can do is in your Claude MD file here, you can actually add some of the software principles, right, into this instruction set so that it has that in mind as it's developing code. Okay, so I can come in here and say, I want to add to this Claude and say, apply the KISS and DRY principles to your instruction set. So what that'll do is as it's coding, it will consciously make an effort to optimize the code and the components and parts that it's building, so that if it created a certain function, it's now going to be reusable across the entire app versus adding it to every single instance that it needs to be used. So when it has to be updated, you're making individual changes versus global changes. Okay, so some of the things that, like, KISS and DRY or object-oriented programming, or even saying, hey, you are a super senior, software engineer at Google, where they use React quite a bit. So you can even go to that level, but I found just saying apply some of these software principles as you're building products is good enough, so that as it's building things out, it can put guardrails on itself so the code is more optimized. Okay, all right, so it looks like it's gone through and fixed the problem. So you guys can see here it had a nice conversation with itself. And now I can see that there is something showing up in our demo page. So this is, okay, so it's got the components of, yeah, pretty nice. This is kind of more, I think, more useful from my perspective than some of these other items, because initial shot is nice, but I actually want the entire system. And here we have the system, right? So we have the personal goal tracker. As you guys can see here, we have that purple again, but this time it's purple and blue. But now we have a nice palette. If you don't like this palette, you can update it here. And now this becomes the guideline for everything else that's going to be built. We have stat cards, we have goal cards. These are much nicer than what I saw here, I believe. Okay, pretty close, but still now we're inside of our Next.js environment, and these components are going to be ready to be used for the entire app. All right, pretty good job. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Cool. So this is an actual dashboard, much more filled out, right, than some of our other examples, but definitely a good start. Nice little interaction with the movement here. I think we need to fix some of these alignment issues, right? You'd want all the cards to be the same size. You don't want it to be changing every time. Oh, this interaction actually works. Very nice. Filtering, okay, cool. Oh, it actually added the goal too. Nice. So I'm pleasantly surprised by the fact that it did all that. Okay, let's see if it did this. Okay, nope. So just a quick goal is all it got to. Great. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So you can see here, guys, like even this button that's dynamic, right? Very cool. And once I reload, this should clear out. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Good stuff. Okay, so now I think we have a very solid foundation, right, to build the rest of our app. And I think our next session, we can look at some of the interactions using the n8n automation. But for today, this looks like a great place to stop the coding efforts. If I go back here, let's see, it still wants to run a few commands. If I go, did it finish the brand work? No, it's still working on this part. or did I interrupt it? I think I may have interrupted it. Okay, let's see. This is still running. This session is done because it's finished. Okay, all right. What I can do here is let's go into our GitHub repo because we have a little less than 15 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and stage all our changes, commit it, and push it up to GitHub. And then we can try and push it live and see what happens from there. Okay, so let's do that. Let that run, hit commit. Then we'll sync the changes up to the GitHub repo. Let's close this window because we already created these. So if I go into Vercel, we should see some preview deployments. Yeah. So every time you guys commit to, it will create a preview deployment. Right now, we don't have any domains set up. So Vercel will provide you a domain for this app. Okay, so right now it's just this vercel.app URL. And right now, let's go ahead and create a pull request. What that pull request is doing is it's going to merge those changes from my other branch into main. So we're going to go to the production branch. If I click on that button, now it's going to show me all the commits I made. We just made 2 commits. And then here, again, you can leverage the power of Copilot so that you don't have to write a pull request message. If I just hit summarize this for me, it's going to look at the pull requests and put this summary together so that I have that in place. Perfect. Great. So it read through the changes, created this for me, and I create a pull request. Now it's going to do some checking, and we can talk about some of the more advanced things you guys can do, but you can see here, hey, the checks have all cleared. It's okay to merge this code into your main branch, and we'll go ahead and do that. Confirm the merge. You can see here, we have a purple item, meaning that it's merged. And on the deployment side of the house, we should now see a production deployment. And you can see here, these were the preview deployments when we committed those changes, but now we have a production deployment, which should take, looks like about 30 seconds. Once that's done, let's go take a look at the site itself. Just get the domain ready. Actually, I'm gonna go into settings if that's done. Let's see. All right, so we have our live app running. Obviously, there's nothing on the home page, but we can go to the design demo. This should be available. Perfect. And the dashboard example as well. Awesome. Great. So during this session, we've created a design direction for our app. Again, there's some things we can be working on, but this looks pretty good on this first shot. And if you guys want to give me some feedback on how you think it compares to this first shot and this first shot versus this first shot, I think we have a much better output here. And so hopefully that gives you some idea on how to get started. These are basic things I think you will do on every project that you're going to create going forward. And then again, next week, we'll go ahead and start building some of the automation using n8n and also think about how to actually connect these two together once we get to that point. All right, let me take another opportunity to see if you guys have any questions. If
I do. Will this video be available to us or with the transcript and stuff?
Yeah.
I know myself as a learner, I'm
lot.
definitely the kind of person who I'm very early in this process. And even when I'm not early in this process as a learner, I tend to have to go back over things and look at them again. But I also just want to say thank you for taking the time to go over this stuff and, work through it.
Great. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, I do plan on posting this, but I think once I sort of do some post-processing with the transcripts and things like that, I definitely will share this with folks that are on there. And I'll pass it on to Larissa or Carson so that the group can have access to it.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, and then also the GitHub repo that I'm currently showing you guys, I'll make that public as well.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
And you're going to be doing this the next couple of weeks as well?
Yeah, so the next one, we're going to jump into n8n, which is this interface here, guys. And one of the cool things that they recently just announced is now you can actually build workflows with just text. So if I come back in here and I went to our PRD, where's our PRD, right? So let's say I take one of these workflows. Now you can just put this in here and it'll start generating the workflow for you, which is pretty awesome. I was working on a solution like this previously, but now they've actually embedded it into n8n. So I'm excited to show you guys this in our next section, where some of this automation is built in n8n, and then we're going to connect it to this app so that some of this functionality we're looking at is actually going to interact with n8n and come back with some data once it's done processing on that side.
Awesome.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Hope this has been helpful. And again, I look forward to showing you guys this part, because this is a really, really exciting feature that they've just released. It will help, especially beginners, get started and understand how things work and not have to go through that entire learning curve. For me, it took me quite a long time to figure all these things out, but you guys are getting to take advantage of the AI capabilities that they are now building into this system. So look at this. I gave it this prompt, and this is what it's built out already with an AI agent in the middle, with access to all of these tools. It's pretty mind-blowing what it's doing right now by itself. All right, so next call will be Tuesday at the same time, 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And again, we'll go through this stuff and see how we can connect it to our app next time. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Larissa, for setting this up and stuff also.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.